I swear, bruh, this new generation of Chicago drill artists blowing up right now like Bloodhound Q50 don't even rap anymore. Their songs are like slam poetry with murder confessions described in painfully clear detail. However, in a sane sequence of events, Q50 has not only blown up, but went from being relatively unknown to having his newest release in the top 10 overall for trending videos on YouTube, and he's the most improved rapper in the city right now. The rise has honestly been crazy, and although he's up now, this newfound fame was earned through some of the most crazy broad day brazen shootings caught on camera.
Chicago police investigating a fatal shooting yesterday evening.
Shooting right in front of a popular McDonald's. One man is dead, 2 others hurt.
And boasting about flat out being a serial killer. I mean, bro publicly has a Facebook where he keeps track of his body count, bragging a couple months ago that he's currently at 8 hats. For me, it's kind of hard to believe though that this dude has 8 confirmed bodies and not somehow in jail or being investigated. I think there might be some type of exaggeration there, but there's no doubt in my mind that this dude has done enough work to be labeled a complete danger to his community. The brazen disrespect is at a new level, partly due to the fact that shooters like him pretty much have free reign when it comes to committing crimes within the city. As of 2023, Chicago PD only solves around 51% of murders in the city overall, but in areas like the south and east side of Chicago, only 21% ever get solved. A city with this high of a murder rate and this low of a clearance rate pretty much leaves straight crash outs at the forefront of the music scene with little to worry about in repercussions. One of the most infamous killers to rise in the new era of the Chicago drill scene was a close associate of Q50 named Bloodhound Lil Jeff, aka Lil Jeff Dahmer. He had apparently 9 to 12 bodies depending on who you ask, and was on a crash out marathon full of snorting perks on camera, taunting ops, and was actually committing murders before he was smoked while trying to spin in a drill gone wrong. The sheer craziness of the circumstances surrounding Lil Jeff's death paved the way for another homicidal maniac in Q50 to have a crazy run this year, and from generating hype from all the major blogs due to a fake story about being involved in a shooting with Philly rapper Skrilla just 2 days ago, which didn't actually happen, to having the #1 song on YouTube with Screwly G right now, things are definitely looking up for him. However, the way he was able to come across his fame was not easy, and was allegedly filled with dropping bodies, being on the run from the law that he pretty much describes thoroughly in his music. So today we got to get into the bodies that made Bloodhound Q50 famous, starting from the jump till current time, to really see inside the mind of one of Chicago's most prolific killers turned rappers, man. We're gonna get into it right now, but before we do, gang, I'm gonna need you to do something for me, man. Like, comment, subscribe. We on the road to 100K subs. Make sure you tap in, hit that link in the description for the merch, and hit that notification bell so whenever I post, y'all are tuned in right away, man. So we got to get into this right now. Chapter 1, the rise of Bloodhounds 079 and Q50. So for those of you that have never been to the city of Chicago, you know, these internet documentary people that have never stepped foot in the city at all and really have no idea, just all their info just comes from the actual internet. It's a city like no other that you could find in the United States, with a huge urban sprawl. The only cities with a comparable size of population is New York or in LA. At the same time, it borders states like Indiana, Missouri, in Kentucky. So even despite having strict gun controls in the city, it's the only mega city where guns are easier to find than a parking spot. On top of that, it's the biggest city within the Midwest region, so it has always had strategic value to gangs looking to control the import and export of drugs and other contraband from the Midwest for the last 100 years. Like, people make it seem like this gang problem is just happening right now, but pretty much ever since the Prohibition era in the 1920s, Chicago has always been a gang infested city. Back then, those Italian gangs controlled the liquor trade and would kill each other very publicly while fighting over control of their turf, which doesn't sound too far off from what's happening today. Pretty much ever since then, gangs have developed and evolved into nations, making the Chicagoland area the most gang per capita city in the United States. This often gives Chicago a pretty demonized reputation due to the high crime hysteria and its high rates of gun violence. But to truly understand why that's the case, you have to look at the history of the city from from the jump. So first off, Chicago is often rated the most segregated city in the United States. A vast majority of murders and shootings that happen in Chicago are in its huge inner cities on the west, south, and east side. First, it was the Italians and Irish that were segregated into neighborhoods, and both of these groups formed gangs with little other options for employment due to racism and xenophobia. This later turned to Black and Hispanic people when minority families began populating the inner cities looking for better work opportunities during the Great Migration from the 1920s to the 1970s. The city was not vibing with this influx of minorities, so redlining went crazy, basically splitting up the city into 4 areas. The north side and north suburbs along with downtown was home to the white people for the most part. There are some hoods in there, like obviously Polo G comes from an area in the north side, but that area got torn down, but that's a whole different story. So this area would receive the vast majority of funding for schools, infrastructure, and police. It's still the safest part of the city today, where you pretty much don't have to worry about gun violence on the daily. I mean, sure, random things happen that go down and there's no gun signs everywhere, but you can walk around most areas there at night and be chill, and most of the gun violence that happens is very targeted and not really towards anyone that isn't doing anything crazy. This area is where banks for a long time would not allow Black or brown people to get mortgage loans, so they pretty much were forced to stay out of there unless they were just working. Next, you have the west side, huge span of the city that includes many Black and Mexican areas that in my opinion might be one of the worst sides of the city when it comes to gang violence. It has nice areas, but it has a lot of problems. It often is the forgotten part of the city with not much investment going on the further you get away from downtown. This area you will often come across abandoned houses, violent gangs fighting over resources and turf, and pretty much everything that Chicago is known for in a negative light, and it's also the home to rappers like Lucky, Ballin' Off 1700, and Z Money. This is one of the areas that minorities were forced to live at. Next, we have the south, southeast, and east side. This is where our story takes us today, and talking about the rise of Q50. So the south side is similar to the west side in terms of investment by the city. This is the most infamous side with very little investment going on as far as policing and schools, but a lot of legendary people have come from here, like Chief Keef, King Von, Michelle Obama, a lot of people really. It's so bad though that police often get chased by gang members with guns, and they pretty much have made this area a lost cause, especially in the southeast area. Judging by the sheer size of Chicago though, they only have so many resources, and gun crimes running rampant, there's only so much you could realistically do. But the southeast and east section of the city is also home to, I'd say, some of the most active gang beasts in recent times in Chicago. A pretty much forgotten area with many gangs living in close proximity. It's almost as if the city doesn't care what goes on in these neighborhoods, because not even the police are safe when they're out there alone. If this section where a gang with some extended history is now becoming on the forefront of the drill scene called the Bloodhounds. Its biggest member right now is obviously BLOODHOUND Q50. The Bloodhounds are a renegade clique of brain-dead Black disciples originally based in the 79th and Maryland Ave area of the Woodlawn neighborhood in the southeast section of the city. They are Black disciples, but they pretty much are brain-dead, meaning they would beef with anyone even if they are a part of the same nation. Originally, Bloodhounds are younger members of a Black disciple gang called Drill City, based in the same area and have close ties to other sets in an alliance with Drill City like 079, MTV, 400 East. At one point, Drill City was actually allied with another notorious gang of mostly GDs called Trap City. They're a mostly GD gang from the 66th area of the Woodlawn neighborhood. These gangs had an over decade-long alliance that was called the 06679 movement. They were really tied in, apparently, with the father of Bloodhound Lil Jeff actually being associated with Trap City, and Verse family is from Trap City as well. They pretty much were allied and tied in with another large subset of gangs called Lawn City as a means of trying to defend against an infamous gang and one of the most hated gangs in the city, TYMB. However, the end of 06679 alliance would start a huge war in the area where the younger members would split and form their own clique, the Bloodhounds, and where members like Q50 and Lil Jeff would make a name for themselves. And the first thing that really causes this whole shift was the murder of Z Money and the rise of Q50 and Lil Jeff, which we'll get into right now, chapter 2. So ruthless shooters Lil Jeff and Q50 were not always catching bodies, even at a younger age. So this new leaf in their life pretty much started several years ago with the murder of their cousin, which we'll get into in this chapter. But in order to tell the story, we have to explain what was happening in their lives since the jump. Q50 had a pretty deep family ties with Drill City and was born and lived in that area, but ended up moving out of that area to Gary, Indiana, and various places in that direction where he would graduate high school. While in high school, similar to Lil Jeff, he had aspirations to play basketball but was too short, so he was focused though on playing basketball for a minute. So both of them, including Jeff, who was actually focused on basketball and tall enough, enough, actually didn't jump off the porch until a little later in life, after they had graduated. Not something you see a lot. Usually people do all the crash out activities first when they're younger, and then as they get older, in their mid-20s, they get a little bit wiser and they don't really be crashing out. But they're kind of an exception. I'm pretty sure this was probably the reason why they went head first into beefs, because they felt that they had something to prove right away to make up for that time. And it was around this time in 2020 that a lot of the younger Bloodhound members were starting to take rap seriously. First out of the younger members was Q50 and Lil Jeff's cousin Zaire Nelson, who went by Bloodhound Z Money, who started being known as a rapper, with both Lil Jeff and Q50 making frequent appearances in his videos. It was also right around the time that Q50 was getting 2 feet into the streets, however, and a major rift would break a decade-old alliance that would lead to an all-out war that would claim many lives on both sides, eventually even the life of Bloodhound Lil Jeff. The actual reason is disputed, with members of Trap City like iTrap Rob, who's now an infamous person for allegedly being the person that would later take out Lil Jeff, saying that in an interview, someone from Drill City or the Bloodhounds, they were implying it was Bloodhound Lil Jeff stole someone's chain, which would honestly kind of add up, because it seemed like Bloodhound Lil Jeff was always stealing shit and was flexing that, but that's neither here or there. Regardless, it seems that in these type of situations, and this is going to be very important, if the person who actually did the slimy activity are harder to find, they're going to go after whoever they can. And unfortunately for the Bloodhounds, they would take the first major loss in their friend group with the murder of Z Money. On Thursday, March 16, 2023, around 1:45 p.m., Zaire Nelson, aka Z Money, would pull up to the Avalon Park neighborhood, a mixed mob area, and stop at a parking lot of a dry cleaner. Shortly after, Chicago police responded to a shot spotter alert of at least 20 rounds and calls a person had been shot on 79th and Kimbart. When they arrived, they found Nelson inside of a parking lot of a cleaner store with multiple gunshot wounds in his body. He was in the car, laying lifeless. He was rushed to University of Chicago, where he was pronounced deceased. Chicago PD says Nelson was in a car in the parking lot in the Star Cleaners when an unknown vehicle pulled up next to him and fired shots, 20 shots, and then fled the scene. They never found the person who did this, but the death had a profound effect on Q50 and his cousin Lil Jeff. Lil Jeff pretty much names this moment as what drove him over the edge to go on a crazy rampage. I say for Bloodhound Q50, this moment would probably play a huge role on his descent into the drill life. It would overall just make a horrible situation turn even worse, with a crash dummy run on the city that had whole businesses closing and death in broad daylight, and we're gonna get into that now in chapter 3. So imagine being such a danger to the community that your actions literally close a whole McDonald's, and you brag about it constantly, bruh. If you listen to Bloodhound Q50's music, this is like the #1 scenario that this dude be talking about on the regular. I'm pretty sure I've seen it in multiple songs. Bro has an IG live asking his ops why they can't go to their friendly neighborhood McDonald's anymore. Has songs and IG videos where he references McDonald's. It's one of the pillars of Q50's personality at this point, and it all dates back to a broad daylight shooting at an infamous McDonald's on the south side of Chicago.
Young man that got shot, he went running back into McDonald's, and a CTA bus operator caught him as he fell. One ran around the back by the Maxwell Street hot dog stand, and he succumbed to his injuries. He fell.
Thursday night, crews boarding up the windows of this McDonald's on 95th Street, just off the Dan Ryan, where police say a woman and 2 men were shot.
Apparently a car pulled up with an individual who opened and shot at least 29 shell casings.
Chicago. One of the most mentioned beefs that Bloodhounds have is primarily with the GD set of 095 Mob. And the story behind this is something I've never really seen before, you know? Apparently rumors basically pin 95 Mob stealing something from the Bloodhounds, but it's like most beefs in the Chicago, it doesn't really matter how things started, it just matters how things escalate. And escalate they did, bruh. Well, one day on November 10th, 2022, an OG from the 095 Mob named Rodney Stone, who also went by Boogie, was visiting a McDonald's with his mother and brother on 95th Street. A quick family outing for some burgers quickly escalated into a broad daylight shooting when a white Infiniti pulled up in the parking lot and 2 men began shooting at the family. The brother was shot in the back, but he survived when he ran inside and fell into security's arms. The mother was shot in the arm, but she also survived. However, Boogie was not very lucky, because when the shooters came, he tripped and fell, and they switched him multiple times as he was the intended target. He would later later die at the scene. This shooting was so brazen that not long after this, the McDonald's would board up its windows and close for good, as this was one of several violent incidents at this restaurant, with multiple others happening over time. Like apparently Lil J got shot in the ass there while ordering one of the most dangerous McDonald's in the city. The crazy thing is, this shooting seemed to be the worst that actually resulted in someone dying at that McDonald's. So I don't know how you can continue eating your Big Macs knowing that someone got smoked there at the front entrance. So yeah, McDonald's ended up closing and has been closed for over a year now. But this wouldn't even be the craziest shooting surrounding Q50's name, as another pretty much broad daylight shooting would come up as a topic in one of his biggest songs and best songs, which we'll get into right now in chapter 4. So remember back in chapter 2 I talked about the beef that Drill City aka the Bloodhounds had with their previous allies Trap City? I'd say this is the craziest beef because it would claim lives on both sides that were major players within Chicago, and would also become one of the major beefs talked about in Q50's music. In fact, one of the biggest songs he had lyrics, I'd arguably say his best song right now is Make It Far. And in the song, the intro of Lil Jeff rapping his lyrics is very telling. He says, "Go ask this Michael Drake, he ended up parked. Go ask my Michael Drake, his ass didn't make it far." These lyrics are specifically talking about a wild situation that we actually previously broke down on the groundbreaking video on Lil Jeff, that I'm gonna say that I was ahead of the game because I made this video months ago. But we gotta break it down again because the shooting of Trap City member Leal is something that is very important and very brought up in his music. You see, after the shooting of Z Money and the breakup of the 06679 alliance, he was on all-out war with Trap City. Apparently in between that point and the Leal shooting, Q Money would end up getting shot himself when he was shot in the leg, apparently to this beef. So surely you know that they were looking for blood because these dudes were crazy, and the first person they get caught slipping associated with Trap City was a member named Leal. Remember, just because they end up getting murdered didn't mean they had anything to do with the previous incident in the beef. It just means they were the first to get caught slipping, and in this case it would be fatal.
19-year-old Jaleel Goins was pronounced dead at Rush University Medical Center, but police and nearby residents tell us the incident began in the 1300 block of West Taylor Street, where Goins was a passenger in a rideshare and was shot. Then the rideshare driver drove Goins to the hospital.
19-year-old Jaleel Goins was on the near west side area of Little Italy, posted up enjoying his evening. He was just leaving the area when he got into a white Jaguar that was an Uber at around the 1300 block of West Taylor Street. I'm assuming the traffic was bad because the car was stopped in traffic for a minute. But then at around 8:55 p.m., two massive shooters would fire multiple shots into the car, killing Leal at the scene. This wasn't even an area near the hood at all. This was pretty much a nice area, very close to downtown, and despite a bunch of camera evidence and it happening in front of many people and in an Uber, no one actually got caught for this. The only evidence we ever saw was Lil Jeff rapping a short verse before he died, and Q50 basically dedicating the whole song to this incident. So these are the most likely and mentioned actual situations where someone was confirmed smoked. But now we got to get into the attempts because they are very important to the story of the Bloodhounds and basically explain the aftermath of what happened to Bloodhound Lil Jeff and Q50. And this is the final chapter of Bloodhound Lil Jeff, which we'll get into in the wild attempt. At this point, Lil Jeff and Q50 were on a wild tear. I've already previously documented on this channel how Lil Jeff allegedly spun on two teens that apparently stole his jewelry who were associated with the West Side gang. But they apparently ended up beefing with another West Side gang. I guess they were just over there and ended up robbing someone else. But they're called TMC after they stole their jewelry off of one of their members. They were going IG Live basically flexing his bloodstained jewelry and showing the dude's name of who they robbed.
I'm gonna show y'all who the guy is. Look, that nigga found mad. It wasn't him, but it was his number. I'm gonna show y'all. Look, first he had on. It's him right here. Ooh, I see it. He ain't had none of this shit. What the first was that? Man, look, we exposing this because that.
Show that dick.
We got an AP already, Stone. I'm having my way in Chicago, Illinois.
Who was named 6300 Bretto. So this would cause a whole IG beef back and forth, and then this is where the story gets crazy, man. They claim they smoked someone else from the gang, a rapper named Slide, who was seen on YouTube, who would drop a bunch of videos and stuff like that. Bro, this is where the story gets crazy because TMC would claim that Slide was in good health and would even go live in his account with someone pretending to be him in the Dominican Republic. Like everyone was thinking they were false claims claiming bodies, but no one actually had seen dude's face or had any idea where he was for a good minute. Pretty much everyone was thinking something had bad happened to him. Several months later, in a hood blog though, members of his gang would basically state he had gotten shot but was okay and recovering, but we never did see him on the internet, and the fact that they pretended like he didn't get shot had people thinking that, yo, maybe Q50 and Jeff actually did smoke this dude. But they would continue to troll at every moment they could, you know, asking where he was and stuff like that. It's honestly crazy, bruh. Maybe he was in a coma or in a vegetable state. Regardless, let's just hope that he's okay now. However, as time would go on, it seemed like Lil Jeff and Q50 would pretty much get reckless, and this would all culminate in one of the craziest broad daylight shootings that got Lil Jeff smoked. But in the words of Q50, Lil Jeff got smoked doing what he loved the most. That was lowering the property values in the ops neighborhood, and that's exactly what they attempted to do. One day, pretty much at the height of Bloodhound Lil Jeff's fame, Q50 and other Bloodhound members would slide on Trap City on June 8th, 2024. They were looking to catch him off guard, and they actually did. Many speculate they were trying to take out very vocal member from the Trap City, iTrap Rob, who since became famous on Reddit and in the Chirac drill scene, but you'll see why in a second. So the Trap City members were posted up on the 6649 Rose area of their neighborhood, seemingly serving a car, when all of a sudden Bloodhound members ambushed them all at once. Keep in mind, this is all caught on a Ring camera. The Trap City members start running for their lives out the way, and Jeff shoots into a car before crossing the street, attempting to shoot at the members. Q50 could be seen in the back literally sliding too, but he slips and falls, and this is where Jeff actually makes a fatal mistake. He was by himself, and he runs up to the beginning of an alley, trying to chase the members, and is met with gunfire immediately from whom many believe to be iTrap Rob. He ends up getting shot in the chest, stood over, and shot multiple times. Around this time in the footage before Jeff is shot, that's where you see Q50 basically slip and fall, which stops him from pulling up with Jeff, so Jeff is pretty much alone at that time. Q50 and someone else could be seen picking up Jeff and dropping him off at the hospital. It was reported he was dropped off at the hospital, but he was already dead by that point, and this brought an end to a crazy ass era in the drill scene. It also seemed like from this point on, Q50 would actually start taking the music seriously in Jeff's memory, and would pretty much focus on dropping non-stop and raising the quality of his music, later signing to Grade A, which is Lil Baby's label, and pretty much, it seems like, sort of move his life into a positive or more positive direction. Obviously, he's still dissing, still doing the same type of stuff, but I'm not sure if he's actually actively sliding anymore. It seems that Lil Jeff might have been a crazy bad influence to him, and now the way that things have moved and Lil Jeff's death basically got a whole bunch of clout onto the Bloodhounds. It actually put his career to the forefront. People were kind of worried if he was actually going to be good, because he wasn't even the best rapper in the Bloodhounds. I feel like Lil Jeff was definitely probably the best forefront person and was like the personality that carried the whole group. But ever since he died, I guess people were still looking for that same authenticity, and it really carried Q50's career to the point where it is now, that he's getting big songs with Vaughn Off 1700, Schoolie G, and he's actually trending on YouTube. And the crazy thing is, when you see the growth, like, bro's music is actually kind of good now. Like, he actually, if he survives this, which I think he might actually, because it seems that he's trying to actually focus on the music, that he actually might have a real career going down. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the streets catch up to him, because they have just done so much evil things that he might end up in jail or might end up arrested. But for the time being, he could end up being the next level of drill in Chicago, man. But hey, let me know in the comments what y'all think about this situation, man. Let me know if you think that this dude actually had 8 bodies, or if these confirmed ones are the only ones that he had, or there was an exaggeration, man. But hey, let me know what y'all thinking. Real say shit. You already know what's going on. Like, comment, subscribe, gang. Peace.